coming up first is Side Effects. As I said earlier, possibly the final film from Steven Soderbergh. He has said this a couple of times before, though, so whether or not he sticks with it this time or not is to be decided. But
and he's still got that Liberace biopic,
which is going straight to TV, because it's going to be a HBO production. There was some problems with the financing of that. That was supposed to be his last film. It looks like now Side Effects is his last film. But
if he's a man of his word, which he is not.
I think he'll go back and make another film because he loves it too much.
He's made something, and I can't back this up with hard facts at the moment, but he's made something like 4 or 5 movies in the last 2 years.
I think 4 films, yeah. So Contagion, Magic Mike,
Haywire,
and Side Effects, and maybe not
in that order, but
in the last 24 months, I believe that's correct. At least that's how we've got.
He's going to start fighting Michael Winterbottom for most prolific director. He's been really, really hard to keep up with of late, and this is actually his first film in years that I've actually managed to catch in the cinema. Because he always catches me off guard, and then I just don't get time.
So Side Effects concerns a young Rooney Mara who decides to take some drugs to help with her depression, and then some bad stuff starts happening. Here is a clip.
Dr. Riggs, I really need to talk to you.
Emily. Yeah, I just got your message. I'm with my wife.
I went to your office, but you weren't there. So I came here and, could we just go talk?
If it's an emergency, I can admit you.
No, I just, I was getting on the subway and it was like when I was in the car. I have to go to work. I just need 5 minutes.
You're going to get to work after? Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay.
I'm sorry. Call me after the interview.
Rooney Mara there with Jude Law as the doctor in question. Just to sort of elaborate on my plot synopsis there. So Rooney Mara's husband has just got out of jail. He's been in there for inside trading. It's played by the wonderful Channing Tatum.
Channing Tatum.
Channing?
Channing.
And she's a bit depressed, trying to adjust back to the life, which is why she goes to the doctor, Jude Law, who fixes her up with the latest medication, Ablixa, which is supposed to help with her depression, and it starts to cause some problems. So that's the basic setup. And it's one of those films, everyone, that we just really can't get too much in the nitty-gritty, because the twists and turns of this plot are something to behold. I didn't know where this film was going the entire time watching it, Dave. I was... actually, for the first half hour, I was pretty bored, because I thought it was a very ordinary film. And then as time went on, I realised that what I was watching was not what was happening. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's funny because this movie took me completely by surprise, and I did intentionally not read anything about this film in the lead up to it. I didn't want to know anything about Soderbergh's next project. I totally avoided everything. The only thing I knew about it was that it involved prescription drugs somehow. So I went in almost blind with the small expectation of getting maybe a sort of possibly a satirical look, or a jab at the pharmaceutical industry and the way that they can be almost like the mafia in there, with the tendencies to do business the wrong way generally. But
control supply and demand, that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right, and almost create problems to solve them with these, next to placebo type drugs. And what we came out with by the end was something totally different that twisted itself so many times that it turned into, it was almost like a sort of Hitchcockian thriller at times. It was a really, really interesting movie, and I think the reason that I feel so strongly about it in a good way is because I had no expectations about it, which is why I'm very reluctant to talk too much about this movie than anything further than about half an hour in. And even just saying that does a disservice, because this, just from listening to us talk about it, will possibly take away some of the shock. Whenever you hear sort of spoiler alerts from reviewers or so on, those in themselves are just spoiler alerts because you're anticipating a change in direction.
Exactly. Yeah.
So we'll try and avoid that. I could wholeheartedly say that this is Soderbergh's best movie for a long time.
Yeah, I think so. As much as I enjoyed Magic Mike, I thought it was a lot of fun.
Yes.
This is a much more accomplished film, and he's sort of pulling out everything from his bag of tricks and using it wisely. You know, sometimes I feel that, I don't want to say he rushes it because that seems too obvious, because he does make a lot of films in a short period of time, but sometimes I feel he doesn't really think things through enough. And you get these films that are sort of a half-formed idea, like Haywire, which I really didn't enjoy at all.
That's right, because Haywire was the product of the main actress being a UFC fighter or whatever she was, and just being interested in her story, the same way that Magic Mike was a product of meeting Channing Tatum and wanting to do a story about his origins in the stripper world. And Magic Mike turned out for the better. Some people will argue otherwise. Haywire turned out definitely for the worse.
Yeah.
Almost unequivocally. Terrible. But this, you're right. And this was another movie that he rushed into, but just turned out that it's his most interesting movie in a long time.
Yeah.
Resembles The Informant, I thought, in a lot of ways, the way the story keeps spiraling and you're not sure what's going to happen next. Although The Informant has a really heavy tone of comedy, and The Informant is one of those rare movies that I will watch. I will happily watch every 2 or 3 months. I love that movie to death.
Yeah, it is
I
great.
even got the book about lysine fixing in America, price fixing in America in the mid-90s. Is not a subject I normally would be interested in, just because that movie was so well done.
Yep.
So it was, it's definitely his most accomplished work for a long, long time, and I think he probably put a little bit more thought into this one than has gone into his sort of fly by the seat of his pants approach lately.
Look, there was a shot that I just want to bring up because I thought it was pretty interesting. It looked like he was directly referencing a Billy Wilder film. You remember a few weeks ago on the podcast, I discussed The Lost Weekend, Billy Wilder's 1945 film about alcohol addiction. And that film opens from a New York skyline, and the camera pans slowly to an apartment building window. And that is the very first shot of the film. Then we go into the scene. And then the film ends with the shot of the same window, and the camera slowly pans back across the city. And that's exactly what happens in this film. It starts with a shot going into a building from the New York skyline, and it ends with the same building and the camera pulling back. It can't be a coincidence. I'm sure he is paying homage to Billy Wilder in this shot.
Yeah, and he definitely knows enough about cinema that I don't think it would be a coincidence.
Surely, yeah. But anyway, I thought that was kind of cute. I just sort of I got quite chuffed when I noticed that. I thought, there we go.
Yeah. Well, if this is to be Steven Soderbergh's last film, I guess in ways he's sort of almost managed to throw everything in his career into it, except the sense of humor, although that is there in times, but in a very different way, sort of a knowing, sort of acknowledgement on the viewer's behalf that things are going on that you're privy to, but the characters aren't.
Definitely.
Really, and things like that. But
having said that, though, most of the time you are as clueless as the central character, and you are trying to figure out what the next step's going to be, and it's constantly surprising, I think.
Yeah, that's true. It definitely takes massive twists and turns, and is surprisingly interesting. And I don't think I'm not entirely sure. We can't be sure till this time next week or a bit earlier next week, but I'm not entirely sure that its box office success it's probably going to be a lot less than Magic Mike, because Magic Mike had a really good publicity campaign behind it. This has got it's definitely got its visual presence out there. It's got ads in bus stops and so on, things like that, but it seems like it's not sure how to market itself.
It reminds me of the Contagion marketing campaign. It seems to be presenting itself as almost a companion piece to that, which obviously it isn't. But both films had Jude Law, and both films, the title, involves illness and drugs, and it just seems to be. But it doesn't seem to know how to market it itself, which is fair enough, because how would you? It's as you say, it's a Hitchcockian thriller.
That's right. Yeah, you can't give away too much without spoiling the movie completely. This film was written by Scott Z. Burns, who has worked with Soderbergh a few times before. He wrote Contagion, he also did The Informant, and he also did The Bourne Ultimatum, which is the third one.
That film. I mean, I love all the Bourne films, but The Ultimatum is really, I think, a high watermark of that series. It's outstanding. That's a discussion for another podcast, but yeah, that film is fantastic.
Sure. Okay, well, he's also working on Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, the sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which was a surprise success and surprisingly good.
Yeah.
And I think he's a great writer. I really should say I almost hated Contagion, and I say that as a longtime Soderbergh fan. I just didn't think that it had any sort of suspense or points, or the sort of amalgamation of different stories never really gelled for me. And this fear that a lot of people came out of the movie with never gelled with me at all. People came out with this sense of fear. You know, you hear a cough and you get really paranoid. I came out of it with a sense of frustratingly, near death experience boredom. I just couldn't believe it that Soderbergh could fudge a piece like that, but I'm aware that I'm not the only one. What did you think much of Contagion?
Yeah, I liked it. I'm not going to overly praise it, but I definitely enjoyed it.
Okay, because it was meant to be the anti-Outbreak, the Dustin Hoffman film. Was it? It was Outbreak, wasn't it?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Mid-90s.
Yeah, it was very similar. I mean,
it's meant to be the thinking man's take on what if a virus broke out and overtook the world.
What I did enjoy about Contagion, I know we're trying to review another movie, but still, Contagion really put the focus on the people that work for the disease control center, and it really did showcase exactly what these people do to prevent mass deaths, and pretty much had them in the hero role, which I thought was pretty cool, because they're the sort of people that have a job that you don't even hear about unless there is an epidemic or there is some big issue. But yeah, these people literally try and save as many millions and billions of lives as they can, and that's and that was thematically interesting for me. But that's about it.
Okay.
It was a fine film.
Yeah, okay, yeah. Well, the only reason I bring it up is because the writer Scott Z. Burns is meant to be eliciting some sort of suspense from Contagion at least, and I thought that everything that Contagion was lacking was poured, tenfold into side effects, and really did a great job from start to finish. Pretty much like edge of your seat thriller at times.
The other thing is Contagion's a global story, and it does concern an ensemble cast, whereas this is a very small story, and it does concern a few central characters, and that's always going to be more interesting for an audience because there's more to cling on to, and there's more to focus on when you're dealing with minimal characters.
Yeah, you've got much more to relate to.
Yeah.
And speaking of the characters, Rooney Mara, she's been a supporting actress for a while now. She had her first, or maybe possibly not first, but actually
she hasn't had many roles.
Leading role in David Fincher's remake of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, which she was almost unrecognizable in. And to see her taking on a lead role like this, she has to display an amazing amount of range. Basically, the equivalent of more characters than the cast of Cloud Atlas, which we'll get to shortly, had to display. I thought she was outstanding, and a sort of left field choice too. I know that they were considering a lot of other actresses for the role,
as they do.
Yeah,
no shortage of 20-something actresses in Hollywood. So yeah.
No, that's true. But she did do a great job.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, she's all right.
No, she's fine. Oh, really? I thought she was really
she was good.
Particularly good. Okay, and it's always a pleasure to see Channing Tatum.
Yeah, so. Yeah. He seems to have a bit of a love, well, not even love-hate, just a great relationship with Soderbergh at the moment. He's cropped up in his last 3 films, I believe.
Yes.
And it's good to see, he's become a really enjoyable, familiar screen presence. I didn't know what to make of him at the start, but he seems to be in so many films right now, and every time he turns up, I'm happy. He's great.
And it's funny, too, because he went from a real meathead lunk.
Yeah, which is what I took him as when I first heard about him and I saw the posters and whatever. I was quite dismissive. But yeah, he's an amazingly likeable screen presence.
Yeah, and if you disagree listening to this, it's because you haven't watched 21 Jump Street yet, which is pretty much the movie that will sell you on Channing Tatum. And it would be remiss of us to move on without mentioning Jude Law as well. Jude Law does a tremendous job, and he's also someone who has created an expectation, and much like Matthew McConaughey has somewhat as well, and managed to subvert it recently.
Yeah. No, it is nice to see Jude Law in a meatier sort of role for a change. He sort of had that run in the late 90s, early 2000s where he was the leading British man in all the big films. And unfortunately, not really his fault, but just some of the films he was in just weren't that great, and he just sort of fell out of favour. And then he sort of had a resurgence as a character actor and as a great supporting lead. And that was fantastic, and now he's sort of stepping back into bigger roles, and I'm happy to see because I think he's got a lot to offer.
Yeah, he's finally diversified the characters that he can actually do.
Yep.
And if it sounds like we're skirting around this film, it's because we are. because it's very hard to talk about. So really, all I can say is this is great. I hope this is a classic example of why Steven Soderbergh should keep on making movies.
Hell
because
yes.
where he's one of those rare American directors that is concerned with story and story alone, and does a great job of conveying that story, and doesn't seem... I know he did the Oceans trilogy, Oceans 11 and so on, but he never seems too swayed by the industry, and obviously he started out with Sex, Lies and Videotape, which is why he was... he managed to, I guess, get in with firm footing on indie ground there, but...
Well, he kick-started a huge independent film revolution at the time.
That's right, yeah. But he still manages to be almost like a sort of Woody Allen figure, where he basically just goes... Well, seems to anyway, just seems to go, I want to make a movie, it's this story, I want to work with this writer, and I want to work with this actor, and then I want to get it on a mainstream release as well.
I think he's a very savvy businessman, and I mean that in the best possible way. I'm not criticising his artistic integrity, I'm just saying because of the Oceans trilogy, and because of those sort of films, he goes for the big money sometimes, and then that gives him the opportunity to do whatever the hell he wants. Studios know that his films make money, so they are willing to give him all the funds that he needs to do whatever passion project he wants. And if they don't give the money, he does it anyway. He makes an independent film.
Yeah, he finds a way to make it work anyway.
I really admire what he does. I don't always enjoy his films, but I really admire him as a filmmaker.
That's right, yeah. Well, he's too prolific, I think, for you to enjoy every single movie that he puts out. But at least every movie that he puts out has this identifying stamp on it, and he can uniquely call it his own. And this is definitely one of his triumphs.
Yeah.
So really, really check out Side Effects.
All right, shall we